Chapter 3: A Calm Life Before the Storm.
At that moment, a drop of rain fell from the sky onto John Smith's face, bringing a cold shiver. John looked up at the sky, which had gradually grown darker, without him noticing, and frowned slightly. He realized he might have overlooked something. I need to build a rain cover for the generator, Gordak. Media, and I should raise the base of the shed where the cement bags are stored to prepare for drainage. Guitar, the geothermal generator, had some waterproof features, but the likelihood of malfunctioning during a heavy storm was still higher than under normal conditions. Building a rain cover for it was necessary. As for the cement, that was even more important. This task was relatively simple for John at this point. With one command, the engineering robot began selecting materials from the scrap pile. Using its sharp cutting tools and laser emitter capable of melting metal, it began constructing a basic framework for the rain cover. Late at night, the heavily accumulated clouds finally unleashed their torrential rain. John went to his bedroom on the second floor and looked out into the yard. The makeshift rain cover was illuminated, and the geothermal generator was running steadily. A row of glowing green indicator lights representing a stable power supply gave John a sense of comfort. Beside the generator, the engineering robot was still working tirelessly. According to John's plan, it would continue to build a miniature excavator and a miniature transport vehicle, assembling a simple construction team to excavate enough underground space for a small shelter. Deep progress is faster than I expected, old John mused. Maybe I could consider selling a few units once they're done if the survival points required for upgrades aren't too high. Media, as he watched the tracks and chassis taking shape in the robot's hands, John considered the materials and the production time. It seemed feasible, and his thoughts became more ambitious. It wasn't that he was greedy, it's just that the profit margins were absurd. A miniature excavator under normal circumstances cost around $30,000. But when John tried buying one after arriving, the price had skyrocketed 50-fold and they were virtually unavailable. A minimum of $200,000 was needed just to get one. With such a massive price difference, even selling just 2 units could expand John's current resource reserves by several times, potentially making him one of the wealthier individuals in the apocalypse. Of course, at present, selling was just a consideration. The shadow of the apocalypse could descend at any moment, and the shelter was John's lifeline. All transactions had to be conducted without affecting the shelter's construction schedule. John knew well enough which priorities outweighed the others. After observing the engineering robot's work for a while and realizing there wasn't much he could help with, John turned his attention away, opened his laptop, and began browsing the news. Mainstream media outlets on the internet were still reporting trivial matters as usual. However, some independent media had mentioned that market controls had become increasingly strict in recent days. Yet, since the prices of common goods like food and fuel hadn't changed much, it hadn't affected people's daily lives, and the general public didn't feel it. The related content didn't receive much attention. Daily rumor has it that all toy factories in East Continent have stopped production, with workers being conscripted by the government for construction work. Deeply headline caught John's attention. He tried to click on it only to find that the original link had already expired. Media, here we go again. God rest John's side. The federal government in this world exercised even stricter control over the internet. If the authorities didn't want certain information released, even if it affected thousands and happened right in the next neighborhood, there would be no useful traces of it online. At most, some vague rumors would circulate in private chat groups, but the sheer volume of outlandish gossip made it impossible for ordinary people to distinguish fact from fiction. Without the apocalypse survival system, John might still be like everyone else, living in a web of misinformation, unaware of the impending catastrophe. The disappearance of that news source, however, was itself a sign of its credibility. John carefully recalled the title, and his mood grew heavier. The shutdown of toy factories seemed like a small thing, but it indicated that society's operation was faltering to the point where it could no longer afford to allocate labor and limited resources to non-essential industries. In other words, they were one step away from declaring a full-scale state of emergency daily. If this keeps up, John muttered daily, we might really have to resort to bartering in the future. Coinciding the grim future, John felt an even greater sense of pressure. Fortunately, he had already spent most of his money, and although his stockpile wasn't enormous, it was enough to last him alone for 3 to 5 years. As for what would happen after those 3 to 5 years with the survival points and the almost miraculous ability to create things out of thin air, John hoped that if things went well, he'd be self-sufficient by then and he wouldn't need to worry about supplies. At midnight, a new day arrived, and the system panel began calculating the day's gains. Survival point settlement for today.
Successfully survived 1 day +1 survival point. Successfully constructed a geothermal generator. Slightly increased survival capability +3 survival points. Acquired the first personal power station. Entered the industrial era +25 survival point.
Current survival points 34 daily. The survival points are piling up daily, John noted, feeling a sense of stability and satisfaction when he saw that even after completing the massive task of installing the geothermal generator, he still had more than 30 survival points left. These points would be his guarantee for survival in the future. The next morning, bright sunlight broke through the clouds and shone into the bedroom. John got up, washed, and went out to inspect the yard. He found that the engineering robot had completed the miniature excavator and had also finished building half of the miniature transport vehicle. Focusing his attention on the miniature excavator, an upgrade panel immediately appeared. Miniature excavator lacking power to evaluation. Apart from slight flaws in power and materials, the craftsmanship is impeccable. 10 upgrade options: diesel version 2 survival points, battery version 5 survival points, unmanned version 7 survival points into. The 3 upgrade paths made John's eyes light up. The diesel version was likely similar to commercially available miniature excavators, but cheaper, requiring just 2 survival points and at most a few $1,000s worth of scrap materials to get a brand new excavator, which now sold for over $100,000. If used wisely, it could be a step toward becoming wealthy. The only downside was that in the upcoming apocalypse, the idea of being rich wasn't particularly attractive. Media can't rush things, John told himself. Daily currency is practically turning into coupons, so having more money won't mean much. With bartering, the value is always there no matter when it's traded. Tickle resisting the temptation, John turned his attention to the other 2 options. Compared to the diesel version, the battery and unmanned versions better suited his current needs. He couldn't get extra diesel, but with the geothermal generator up and running, electricity was not an issue. The unmanned version included both battery power and autonomous driving along with automatic construction, quietly a crucial feature for John. Being alone and with limited resources and secrecy concerns, he couldn't hire workers to excavate the underground shelter. The unmanned version solved this urgent problem. Daily upgrade to the unmanned version, John decided without much hesitation. The 29 survival points he earned yesterday gave him confidence and the ability to be a bit extravagant. In an instant, the upgrade was complete, and before John stood a miniature excavator without a driver's seat with tracks and a chassis no longer than 1.5 meters. It had a futuristic look. Getting closer, John found that his laptop could wirelessly connect to the onboard computer of the excavator, allowing him to issue commands and assign work tasks remotely. Total weight, 1.5 tons. Full power consumption, 2 kilowatt-hours per hour battery capacity, 40 kilowatt-hours maximum charge time, 2 hours. Here, the stats are pretty good, and John noted, compared to similar models on the market, the battery capacity and charging speed were both twice as good. While it wasn't exactly cutting-edge technology, it was advanced enough to justify the 3-fold upgrade cost compared to the diesel version. In a stable society, reverse engineering this onboard battery alone could probably make him a regional tycoon. After satisfying his curiosity, John hurried back to his bedroom to connect his laptop to the excavator. He then uploaded the shelter design plan he had acquired from a second-hand market to the excavator's onboard computer. After about 10 seconds of data matching the onboard computer confirmed a successful match, the miniature excavator, now stationed in the yard, began starting its engine digging into the ground as per the design specification. Simultaneously, a virtual structure of the underground shelter appeared on John's laptop screen, complete with the layout of the farmhouse above, underground geological information, the excavator's current position, and even detailed progress indicators showing the estimated remaining excavation time. This level of automation is incredible, like John said, feeling for a moment like he was playing a game. He turned his head and looked out of the window, watching the excavator slowly dig a downward slope in the yard. After a long while, he finally snapped back to reality. It wasn't the time to waste anyway. John got up and went downstairs, heading to the yard. He walked around the area where the excavator was working, marked a spot, and picked up an electric hammer to start working on the courtyard wall. The farmhouse was located in the outskirts, with the courtyard's front gate facing the road and its rear bordering a barren rocky area. The plot wasn't large, but it wasn't small either. Getting from the front gate to the rocky area required a fair bit of walking. John planned to create a new exit in the wall facing the rocky area to facilitate the transport vehicle when dumping soil and rocks outside in the future. It was one of the few tasks he could personally contribute to in building the shelter. Despite having a good plan, the actual execution wasn't as smooth as he'd hoped. What seemed like a simple task was unexpectedly exhausting. By the time John had managed to create a 2 to 3 meter wide gap in the wall, nearly 3 hours had passed. He was so worn out that even lifting the electric hammer felt impossible. I'm never doing this again when I thought regretting that he had underestimated the physical strain. He leaned against the wall to rest for a while, wiped off his sweat, drank a can of cola to replenish fluids, and tidied up the area a bit before returning to the yard. The engineering robot had nearly completed the miniature transport vehicle. John decided to wait there, and as soon as the robot finished, he spent 5 survival points to upgrade it. The upgraded transport vehicle looked like a large toy with a total length of less than 2 meters. Since it was unmanned, it had no driver's cabin, just a tracked chassis with a dump bed that could carry 2 to 3 cubic meters of soil and rocks. Top speed 20 kilometers per hour, load capacity 5 tons, battery capacity 40 kilowatt hours, maximum continuous operation 40 hours. As a transport vehicle, its speed was laughably low, somewhere between a tool and a large toy. However, John was quite satisfied with it. He had specifically requested a tracked chassis, so speed wasn't a priority. As long as it could move smoothly across mud and rocky terrain for short-distance soil and rock transport, it was enough. The load capacity, likely due to the sturdy tracks and a sufficiently powerful engine, reached 5 tons. Even with a full load of rocks, it could operate without any issues. For the purpose of building the shelter, this transport vehicle was practically flawless. Without hesitation, John swiftly integrated the newly completed transport vehicle into his construction team. As the sound of metal bearings turning filled the air, the transport vehicle began moving slowly towards the construction site. It worked alongside the miniature excavator, transporting and dumping the piles of soil and rocks that had accumulated in the yard onto the barren, rocky land outside.